For almost 300 years, one formation ruled the battlefields of the ancient world, a wall of men and spears, shoulder to shoulder, that no one could break head-on. It began as a way to keep 10,000 stranded soldiers alive. It was refined into the weapon that shattered Sparta. It was sold to the highest bidder and rebuilt into a machine that conquered the known world. It was pushed to a peak of terror by old men who never lost, and it even taught Rome how to lose. And then, on a single afternoon, it met the one thing it could not survive. This is the story of the Phalanx, told through 7 turning points, from the march to the sea to the field at Pydna. 10,000 Greek soldiers wake up 1,000 miles inside enemy territory. Their employer is dead, their generals have just been murdered, and no one is coming to save them. They had marched east as hired muscle for a Persian prince, Cyrus, who wanted his brother's throne. At a place called Cuinexa, they won their part of the battle, and it meant nothing, because Cyrus got himself killed and the whole war died with him. When their commanders went to negotiate a way home, the Persians seized them under a flag of truce and executed them. Leaderless and surrounded, the army was expected to fall apart. Instead, a man who wasn't even an officer stood up. Xenophon had come along as an adventurer, a student of Socrates with no command. That night he spoke, and the soldiers elected him one of their new generals. He had no plan to win. He had a formation. He kept 10,000 men in disciplined ranks and marched them north, fighting through mountain tribes and freezing passes, the Phalanx moving as one body that could not be broken. Until one morning, from a mountaintop, the men in front began screaming a single word, and it rolled back down the column. Thalata, the sea, the way home. For generations, everyone knew one rule of war. You do not beat the Spartans. Their Phalanx had crushed every army that dared to face it. Then one Theban general did the unthinkable. Sparta's power rested on a reputation. Their crimson-cloaked hoplites were the most feared infantry in the Greek world, and the sight of that line had won battles before they even began. The custom was to line up evenly, best troops on the right, so the 2 strongest wings met head-on. Against Sparta, that was a fair fight, and a fair fight against Sparta was a loss. So Epaminondas refused to play fair. Instead of spreading his men evenly, he stacked one wing 50 ranks deep, an impossible weight of shields aimed straight at the Spartan king and his best men, and held the rest of his line back. At the tip he put the sacred band, 300 hand-picked warriors, who smashed into the Spartan right before it could react. The deep column crushed the finest soldiers in Greece, killed the Spartan king where he stood, and in one afternoon at Leuctra, the myth of Spartan invincibility was gone for good. And a few years later, a teenage hostage from Macedon named Philip would study exactly how it had been done. An 80-year-old king from a city that had just been humbled sailed to Egypt to work as a hired soldier, and he was worth a fortune. His name was Agesilaus, king of Sparta. After Sparta's myth was broken, his city was poor and desperate, so the old king did the unkingly thing. He sold his sword. Egypt was in revolt against Persia and needed Greek generals, and no one alive understood the Phalanx better than a Spartan. But his employer, the pharaoh Agesilaus, treated him like hired help, mocked the little limping old man, and kept command for himself. So Agesilaus did the ruthless thing. When a rival named Nectanebo rose up to seize the throne, the old king changed sides, took his mercenaries with him, crushed the competition, and put his new patron on the throne of Egypt. Nectanebo paid him a fortune for Sparta. Agesilaus set sail home in the dead of winter and died on the way, on a lonely stretch of the Libyan coast, past 80 and still working. His body was preserved and carried home to Sparta. Most conquerors win battles. This man did something rarer and more dangerous. He built a machine that would keep winning long after he was gone. His name was Philip, and he inherited a joke. Macedon in his youth was a backward kingdom on the edge of the Greek world, its army a part-time militia that lost to every neighbor it had. But as a teenager, Philip had been sent to Thebes as a hostage, in the years right after Thebes shattered Sparta. He spent that captivity watching the most advanced army in Greece drill and thinking about how he would do it better. When he took the throne, he started with the weapon. He threw out the old hoplite spear and armed his men with the sarissa, a pike nearly 18 feet long, twice the reach of anything they would face. It took 2 hands to hold, so he shrank the shield to a small disc strapped to the forearm. A hedge of these pikes could stop an enemy from ever landing a blow. Then he changed the men. Instead of farmers called up in summer, he built Greece's first full-time professional army, paid year-round to do nothing but train. He funded it by seizing the gold and silver mines of Mount Paneion, 1,000 talents a year, more money than any rival city could dream of matching. He broke the Phalanx into units with real officers and chains of command, so it could maneuver instead of just shove. And he paired it with something new, an elite strike force of heavy cavalry, his companions. The pikes would pin the enemy in place, the anvil. The cavalry would smash in from the side, the hammer. Fix them, then break them. In 338 BC, he brought the whole machine to a field called Acherowonia, against the combined armies of Athens and Thebes. His 18-year-old son, Alexander, led the cavalry charge. And there the machine closed a circle. It destroyed the sacred band of Thebes, the very unit whose tactics young Philip had studied as a hostage, wiped out to the last man. 2 years later, at his own daughter's wedding, Philip was murdered by one of his own guards before he could launch the invasion of Persia he had spent his life preparing for. He never got his war. Some were over 60, a few were past 70, and in 40 years of war, no enemy had ever broken their line. They were the Silver Shields, the most feared infantry in the world, veterans who had marched and killed since the days of Philip. They faced silver over their shields and walked onto every battlefield knowing one fact: they did not lose. Under Alexander the Great, they were the anvil his whole legend rested on. Every impossible gamble he took worked because he knew this wall of old men would hold. They made his miracles possible. Then Alexander died and his empire tore itself apart. And the most valuable thing in that world was no longer a crown. It was these old men. Whoever had the silver shields won. They had become kingmakers. At a battle called Abiene, they shattered an enemy army without losing a man. But while they broke the front, the enemy's cavalry slipped behind them and seized their camp, and everything in it. 40 years of plunder and their wives and children. These unbeatable men were handed a ransom demand. And to get their families and their gold back, they took their own general, tied him up, and handed him to the enemy. It worked. They got their baggage, and the man they surrendered to, wary of soldiers so dangerous, quietly broke them up and sent them off to die on the far edge of the world. Carthage was losing the war badly. A Roman army was camped outside the city. Its consul was dictating surrender terms. Then Carthage hired a single Spartan, and everything reversed. It was 255 BC, the first great war between Rome and Carthage. Rome had invaded Africa and beaten the Carthaginians again and again. In desperation, Carthage hired foreign mercenaries, and among them came a Spartan named Xanthippus. He looked at their defeats and saw what they had missed. Carthage actually had the better tools, war elephants and the finest cavalry in the world. But they kept fighting in hills and broken ground, where elephants and horsemen are useless. They were losing with a winning hand. So Xanthippus didn't get them a new army. He rebuilt the one they had, the infantry phalanx in the center to hold, the elephants and cavalry massed on the wings. Then he marched the whole army down onto a wide, flat plain and dared Rome to come. At the Battle of Tunis, it was a slaughter of the Romans. The elephants smashed their front, the cavalry swept the Roman horse away and crashed into the legions from behind. The same army that had been winning for years was destroyed, and their consul was taken prisoner. Xanthippus changed nothing about who they were. Same soldiers, same beasts, same city. He only changed where they fought. The Roman general said he had never in his life been so afraid. In front of him was a wall of 18-foot pikes, the most feared formation on earth, grinding forward. 1 hour later, it was gone forever. The year was 168 BC. This was the phalanx that Philip built and Alexander made legendary, still, 2 centuries on, the deadliest thing on a battlefield. Rome had finally come for the last king of Macedon, a man named Perseus, at a place called Pydna. At first it went exactly as everyone feared. On flat, open ground the Macedon pike wall was unstoppable, and it shoved the Roman legion straight back. Nothing could get through that hedge of spears. But a phalanx has one weakness. It only works if the line stays perfectly tight. And as the Macedon pressed forward, chasing the Romans, they moved onto rough, broken ground, hills and stream beds, and the line couldn't hold its shape. Small gaps began to open between the units. The Romans fought in small, flexible squads, and they saw it. They stopped meeting the pikes head-on and poured into the gaps, getting inside the spears, where an 18-foot pike is useless and a short sword is everything. From inside, they cut apart a formation that could not turn to face them. In about an hour, the greatest infantry system in history was destroyed. Macedon ceased to exist as a kingdom, and the phalanx, after 200 years of ruling the world, was finished. 7 battles, 3 centuries, 1 idea. The phalanx rose because it was rigid, unbreakable, perfectly disciplined, and it fell for exactly the same reason. Every system that conquers the world eventually meets a world it can't bend to, and the strength that makes you dominant becomes the strength someone uses to break you. Nothing wins forever. The moment you can't adapt, you are already finished.